Tactical Tuesday. Dean Cottrill here, Senior Vice President for T3 Sixty. I run the Brokerage Consulting Division. We have a great topic and great guest today for our Tactical Tuesday. We got Kelly White with us. She's our SVP, Senior Vice President for T3 Talent. Welcome, Kelly.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dean. I'm excited to be here.
You bet. Well, this is a great topic. This is my favorite topic.
Awesome.
Is how to recruit in a changing market and changing times. So we have some changing times going on right now, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. Yep. Lots of change and challenges that we can meet with all kinds of good knowledge and action.
Yep. And that's what we're going to get into. Kelly's going to get into really talking about recruiting and it's a high level, and we're also going to get down to nitty gritty too in a couple areas. It's going to be a high value conversation about recruiting, and especially at this time with COVID-19 and the challenges. And just as a reminder, everybody, we do the Tactical Tuesdays. We launched this once COVID-19 came about as a way to give outreach and to support the industry. We also do, it was Stefan Swanpour, our CEO, and also President Jack Miller on Fridays at 2 o'clock Eastern time. They do the fireside chats, which have been really beautiful, fantastic. I've enjoyed those as well. So let's go ahead, Kelly, if you can, before, so everyone has some context, give a little 2-minute synopsis of your career, who you are, your background, and then let's dive right into it.
Yeah, sounds good. So yes, I'm Kelly White, and I work with T3 Sixty, obviously, and my background, I've been in the real estate industry since 1997. And I've done recruiting in all various capacities, both in the medical industry and also in the real estate industry and the mortgage industry as well. So I've kind of worn all the hats. I've been a real estate agent. I've had a brokerage, and I've been in 2 national franchise companies. So I was the national director of talent attraction for Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. And I've also been very involved in recruiting in the mortgage industry as well. So I look forward to having a conversation with you and answering any questions that we can, and just offering some insights into what can we be doing now to help grow our businesses. So let me go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint. That's me. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take everything in the context of our current situation and how we can take advantage of that and what we can do. And so in doing that, I thought we would talk about the fundamentals, right? So just a reminder that there are fundamental things we can be doing within the context of this current market. And then we're going to talk about some specific opportunities that might be in front of you. And then it seems a little ironic, but at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about mindset, because often we know what to do and we know how to do it, but it's harder to actually do it. So we'll address the mindset piece at the end. So
yeah, that's going to be I love the mindset piece. I'm glad you added that. It's important, so important. It's important, more important than I think than everything else, that mindset.
And I'll intersperse a little bit of that in here as we go. And I also give the context of, I've been doing a lot of calls with the Ask T3, which is doing some one-on-one sessions with broker owners. And so a lot of what I'm talking about is coming from what I'm noticing that people are experiencing and the questions that they're having. So please feel free to chat, ask questions as we go through this.
Yep. And at the end of this, we'll actually give the web address where you could sign up for it. I'm sure Chris will probably throw it up there in the chat window too. Just some housekeeping real quick too is if you have a question for Kelly or for myself on this topic, just go ahead and put it in the chat window, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. All right, go ahead, Kelly. I'm sorry.
Cool. So let's dig into a little bit about the fundamentals and just some context and reminders that one of the things when I talk about recruiting, and one of the things that I've been noticing in some of the people I talk with, is they don't yet have a consistent and systematic process that they can implement. And so I want to kind of bring that up on the front end of how important it is to be able to have a systematic approach to what you're doing, and that we don't just do one-off activities, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do, 20 things. It just means that you may be doing 1 or 2 or 3 things consistently over time and building on that. So remember as well that really recruiting and retention are the 2 things that are the highest ROI that we could do for our business, and that it also does impact all areas of your business. So it impacts your brand, it impacts your marketplace, it impacts your office, it impacts you, it impacts the growth and all of those different of all of those different things. So just the context behind that.
Yeah, on that, Kelly, I'll just jump in real quick. One of the things that I think is so important, it's leverage. When you talk about negotiations, because when you just made that comment, it kind of a light bulb came on for me. When you talk about leverage and negotiations, when you're trying to recruit or retain your current agent population, if you have more agents leaving your organization than coming to you, your leverage is not great. People are seeing that, there's like, why is everybody leaving? The opposite is if you have a lot of people coming to your organization and not that many people are leaving, people are like, I'm in the right place, and they just stay focused on business. So it puts you in a much better leveraged position in negotiations, because by having a systematic, consistent process, like you say here, where you have consistent focus on bringing talent in to you, that's going to help you in so many other places, ROI, other things, but also put you in a better leveraged position.
Absolutely. And it also brings that sort of energy to your business as well when you're getting new people in and you're adding people to the mix. There's just so many factors that it affects. So I think just remembering that right now is an important piece. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we'll talk about real quick in the context of this as well is what's important about recruiting is a couple of key things. And I find that the more you can focus on a few key things, the easier it is to take action. So just a reminder that we want to be focused on increasing net agent count. We also want to increase per agent productivity and retention. Monitor compliance. Those are some of the things that you, either as a broker or you may have managers that are doing this. Providing leadership, obviously, and then also ensuring the profitability through P&L and financial analysis. And so one of the things that often I see is that people don't factor in the attrition, the natural attrition that we have as an industry. And I want to bring that up, Dean. You and I were talking about this earlier in the context of this current market situation, is to be thinking about what is your net agent count? What might that attrition be that you would normally have? And what might that attrition be now? Just in the factor of we might lose agents for whatever reason because it isn't in their best interest to continue practicing or whatever the case might be. So, you and I were talking about the opportunity cost. People often think if they don't recruit, that's no big deal, but it's actually can become negative ROI because your natural attrition means you're not stagnating, you're actually going backwards. And so you had some insights about percentages.
You bet, because one of the things when working with all the brokers that we work with across North America, one of the things some do not take into account, and we encourage everybody on this call to take into account as you're looking to, as your growth plan, as you head into a new year, whatever the timeline is. Right now, because of COVID, I'd do it right now. Yeah. But you need to look back and understand what we call a churn rate or a disassociation rate, meaning how many people have left your brokerage or your organization or your team, depending on what you're running, over the last 12 months. And then we would encourage you to actually look back over 24 months. So and average those out. So if you look back the last 12 months and also 13 to 24 months back, see what those losses were, get the average. And that's probably going to be close to the average in a normal market, like we might have, and I say air quotes, normal market, like we experienced in 18 and 19. Well, this isn't normal. Kelly just made a very good point. We could have more attrition this year because of some of the challenges going on than before. So when someone says, I always like use 100 agents just as easy math, it makes it simple. But when you think of an organization that's 100, when we look at key benchmarks, when we evaluate organizations, typically a red or worst case scenario is 20% or more attrition per year. So that would be what we would encourage you guys to plan as you look at your growth plan. So if you're going to lose your 100 agents at the beginning of your timeline for a 12-month cycle, if I lose 20% or 20 agents, and my goal is to grow, and I say I wanted to get to 120 agents in the next 12 months, your goal is 40 agents recruited in, not 20. And That's what a lot of brokers don't take that in consideration, that churn rate. And one thing to your other point too, on ROI and the feeling and the leveraging in your company, if you lost 20 agents a year, in 5 years, you'd be out of business. So that should be that's even more energy and focus on recruiting and bringing talent in and creating that upward spiral of good feeling, good thoughts, positivity, higher revenue, all those things come with that.
Absolutely. And it's such a great conversation for us to be having at this moment, I think, because a lot of us have been focused on all the other aspects of our business, maybe expenses and staffing and
Yep.
production and all of that. And so now it's like, okay, let's really, in the context of this, look at, sorry, I'm going backwards.
That's all right.
Let's look at the 5-step process that I talk about, thinking about the opportunity to examine all the areas that we have in our organization in recruiting. So I've had a lot of people ask me, you know, should I be recruiting? Should I not be recruiting? What should I do? And I would say, yes, you should be recruiting. And I also want to say that in the context of your market, everybody on this call may be in a different position. Like you might be a broker, you might be a manager, you might be in a market where you're not quite ready to recruit, but there are things that we can be doing that are going to shore up your business right now that would be a great opportunity. And so I think they fall within the confines of this, you know, 5-step fundamental process. And so the very first
one thing I'll throw out on that point, because it kind of catches my ear, Kelly, is anybody on this call is a leader of their organization or some form is in a leadership position. So it should definitely be on your radar screen because it's on your competitor's radar screen. So that's something you definitely need to be aware of and focused on it as a leader. And this is in time of change. Actually, what we're really seeing in time of change is the people are moving. Traditionally, experienced agents don't move unless something really happens to where they are that really shakes the foundation of their thinking of why I'm in this current company. Why, you know, something changes on maybe the compensation structure. They change something else. Who knows? And typically it's 16 contacts before you get your first face-to-face meeting. So it's the old, it's the old marathon, not a sprint in these relationships building. But with COVID-19, we're really finding the cream of the crop is rising. Agents are looking for someone who's got their hand on the wheel, who can they can feel comfortable as a leader looking to them saying, you know what, this organization really is doing a great job during these challenging times. I feel more comfortable over there because my current leader over here is sitting in a corner waiting for this to pass and is not really helping us through this challenging time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I do think that we're specifically in a period of time where over the next 3 to 6 months that having your kind of fundamental systems in place to be able to take advantage of this is really the right time. So in talking about, you know, understanding, let's just talk about this 5-step process. We'll just go through it together, Dean. So like number one is, you know, understanding your key differentiators. And then what I like to call it the 7 key areas of value. And what I would just encourage everybody to do is if you already think you have this, think about it in the situation that we're currently in and how is that different, right? So how are you even of more value now than you might, maybe even more than you were before? And so, you know, ways that you can examine that are knowing specific metrics. So for example, knowing what your per agent productivity number is, how that compares to the MLS, knowing how you rank within your market, identifying agents who are in your office or in any of your offices. You might have multiple offices, and how those people, how you've helped them grow their business so that it grows yours, and being able to speak to how you've helped those specific people in your office grow so that you have a narrative around that.
Sure. Like a case study and things like we do where you have, that's really taking it to the extent, but also reviews or testimonials are probably more from agents. So that's something regularly you should get testimonials from agents in your operation talking about, you know, the things they like. That's a good way to actually determine whether you're going to retain them, because if they won't give you a testimonial, then they're probably potentially looking at alternatives.
Right.
So
and
that could be one strategy.
I think you and I, Dean, were talking about how, you know, sometimes this seems like a complicated endeavor when it really isn't. Yeah. So if you just know, you know, so for example, if you know that you know how to increase an agent's production from X to Y, and you can speak that, and you know consistently you measure that, then that can be very attractive in conversations that you're having in recruiting. And so, you know, it can be simple things like, I have a couple of key questions here. So if you wanted to just quickly analyze your market, like you can go into all depths of analysis in terms of market. But there's a couple of things that I would be looking at now in the horizon of what's happening, which is who really are your top 3 competitors in your market. And then the most important question after that is, why is that? Right? Because that may have shifted, and the obvious competitor in the market, maybe top market share, maybe that's not really your competitor, right? So maybe, you know you have a specific model, and so you're looking to penetrate a very specific part of the market. And so understanding that is important, but that's an easy question.
Yeah.
And then, like, look at what the indicators are. Is it market share, number of agents, or average productivity per agent? Because you can compete on different levels depending on what you think your competitive advantage is in that marketplace.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Part of it is putting your flag down and saying, you know what, we're going to stand for this. This is what separates us. And to your one point, sometimes it's overwhelming when someone says, all right, what are my unique value proposition? What's my unique value? And sometimes I have to say, it's not unique. It's just that you do it better than others.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
So, yeah, because sometimes you hear that unique value proposition, like, you know what, we sell houses. Well, we sell them a heck of a lot faster than everybody else does them. We sell them for more money. Our sales price, list price percentage is here when the market is here. And we do it in X days compared to the competitors. So, and then that helps you then drive this conversation down. Well, why is that? Well, because we market the home to more places. We generate more this, we do more that. And so that helps you then work down to some additional things that you're doing, whether from your leadership position in ways that systemize support tools, help that you provide to your agents that can separate, and that becomes more unique in the package, but the stats can really kind of accentuate the point.
Yeah, so I love to say, what are your 7 key areas of value, and then how do you demonstrate that and in your conversations with the potential recruit, right? So to your exact point, you've got 7 things. One might be technology, one might be training, one might be core values.
Yep.
And so how are you unique, and what is your competitive advantage as it relates to whomever it is that you want to recruit? And then being able to demonstrate that in a conversation, or, a simple one that's not so simple, ironically, is, this notion of core values. And people say they have core values all the time, but, how do you demonstrate that you really have core values in your culture? And thinking through, like, how is that a manifestation that I can show or give that, or have a recruit experience that, is part of sort of an exercise that you can go through. And it's pretty simple. It doesn't have to take you, 6 months. You can just say, these are the 7 areas. This is how I do it better. And this is how I'm going to talk about it. And this is how I'm going to demonstrate it. And then that takes you into being able to have better conversations when you do actually start to talk to people, because you know what your unique value is.
Yeah. And one of the nice things that happens from this is when you start focusing on anything and start tracking it, you're going to have different results. All right. And the hope is then through the strategies and your hard work, the improvement, you will improve in those areas, and you'll even create bigger differentiation between you, your organization, and your competitors down there, because you are focusing on those key areas, whatever those are.
Yeah, and I would say too that that's the other part of sort of just this number one, before we forget to talk about it, Dean, is really knowing who your target agent that you want is, and how what you offer to them is relevant to them and competitive. And so depending on the size of the company that you are in, right? So some of the bigger companies, they have recruiting strategies that specifically target new agents, and then they have recruiting strategies that target maybe, 1 to 3 million in production. And the larger you get, you can implement maybe different strategies for the different types of agent pools that you have in order to grow larger. But often when I'm talking to maybe smaller brokers, it's really a matter of, what is your target agent that you're going after, and how does your model specifically take care of that to them? So when you go out and you market, or you're having conversations, you're talking in ways that attracts those people. And that's a really important part of creating a consistent platform that's not just like one-off activities, because it allows you to do, the next step, which is step number 2, setting up your database. But, what are your thoughts, Dean, about sort of identifying your target agent, especially right now, considering the landscape?
Yeah, this is something that we dive into in our fellows program. It's called recruiting personas. And in that, so I love the idea. It's really where you look at agents that you'd like to bring to your organization. It might be somebody you already have some personas in your company. Like, I'd love to replicate these agents. And then you look at them and say, okay, what are their wants? What are their needs? And then what are the system services tools that you have to provide those supports? Because you might find gaps in those areas, looking at trying to recruit that talent during that exercise. So I completely agree with you. It's really creating some strategy around who do I want to attract to my organization? Here are their wants, here are their needs. So if it's a new agent, for example, new agent needs training, needs support, needs other things depending on your marketplace. What do they need, right? And training and support is a consistent throughout any market. So what are the tool systems support that you provide to help in those key areas, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And then what's great about that is it takes us into that's sort of the whole setup for thinking right now and taking advantage of the opportunity to be able to refine this now in this current moment, and then say, okay, now how do I go get that data? So it might be broker metrics, or you might already have it, but then you take that data, you make sure you're set up in your database properly, right? So whatever, we all have databases, but just make sure you have a database that's set up that has your recruiting data with your targeted agents, and then has your automated marketing campaigning, because anything you're doing, you want to be able to do consistent activity, which might be a phone call, it might be an invitation to an event, you might have networked with someone, you put them in there, they go on some kind of an automated campaign, and then you're working whatever digital strategy that you're working. And so you'll notice that that's more around lead generation for prospects. But I find that most people get stuck on step one, which is maybe making it too complicated than it is. Do your best take at it, start taking action, and then you can refine it. And I would say that, now's the time to do that, and also be able to look at the horizon of what we're doing and adjusting as needed. So any thoughts on setting up a database, Dean?
No, I'd say one of the biggest differentiators is you. So
true.
That's one thing you have to realize. You look in the mirror and say, the biggest difference I have between me and the competitors is me. And you should bring something of great value to help support business partners in their goals to achieve whatever they're looking to achieve in this business. So that's a differentiator. That is definitely unique. So highlight that. And it's something that you want to accentuate how you support that growth personally and how you bring that to the table. And then all the other things that we talk about. Database, that ties into something that's going to help to be consistent. Having a database, going back to the old Excel spreadsheets or the old, sticky notes, things like that. That is a terrible way to go about doing anything consistently. So that's something, having an effective database. There are several products available out there as well that actually search and find out agents whose business is off year over year, things like that. So that ties into another key area where you can reach out. That's one of those areas that agents that are experienced or thinking about maybe making a change is because they're blaming their broker why their business is off. So that's another thing. And some of the databases can provide that information to you, and you should have your own database that you keep track of your client database with your recruiting, people, A, B, C, D. I like to do that. Who's your target group, your A's that you'd love to get over, your B's, your C's.
Yeah. And I, kind of piggybacking, we keep getting stuck on one because it's such an interesting topic, I think. But I think to your point, Dean, about you being a competitive advantage, what I've really noticed is when you understand the market and you understand what's going on and you're knowledgeable and you're speaking from that and you really are committed and know that your brand is the best brand for somebody, that is going into any conversation that you're having produces so much more confidence because you really know that the best place for someone that's the right fit should be with you, right? So I think that was such a key point. And
if you don't believe that, you have a major challenge. So you have to first internally believe the fact that you are the best place in town for them to be successful. And that emanates from you. People can sense confidence. So that's really important piece of it. And having the database, the follow-up techniques, because you never know when that day is going to happen. I always just say when I would make my recruiting calls and someone answered the phone, say, I'm really happy. And I'm saying, great, I love happy people. And they continue the conversation. They said, well, I'm not thinking about leaving. I said, well, I've actually never in my history of being a recruiter and reaching out to people like yourself never called on the day that someone was making a change.
Yeah.
It's something though that having options in life is a good thing. So at some point, if you ever decide that where you are is not the best place, having other options, having a short list of other options, that'd be something of value to you, wouldn't it? And that's the angle. You kind of go that direction.
Absolutely. And then you keeping in touch with them, which is the setup for all of these things, which is being able, when they do go to that place, that they're like, of course, Dean's the person I'm going to talk to. So I think, just to recap, and then I want us to be able to go into like what's happening now. So I know, if you have all of these 5 things set up, you are good to go. So let's talk about the opportunities now and what that might be. So, one thing I want to point out is number 1 is really tune into your marketplace. And when I say that, you're probably going to say, well, what does that mean? And, one of the things that's been really effective for me is to really tap into my affiliate relationships, whether it's mortgage, title, insurance, other people across the country. I'm sure you're already doing this, but the more you can know what's going on in your market and affiliates, I have found a very invaluable relationship as my affiliate with my mortgage lender, and being able to know on a moment-to-moment basis what's actually happening. Because sometimes what's happening in that domain impacts in advance what we might be doing. And so I would say tune in to whatever is going around and be tapped into it, because then you're going to be able to take advantage of it. Because if you're not tapped in, then knowing what's going on is going to be more difficult. And that's probably obvious. But Dean, what do you have to say about that?
No, I agree. I think opportunities now, a great way is, I mentioned this earlier, but being a leader, sharing with your agents and your team, what's going on. We have some really great leaders that we're working with, and they talk about how they'll actually start from the national level. On a national level, here's what's going currently in this market. Showing Desk has a great system and a website that gives great information about actual showings and how they dipped and how now they're coming back in many jurisdictions. And actually some states, they're higher now than they were before this all started. So that's insightful. So national, state level, local, and then your company. What's your company stats? That's where you really stay in tune with the market. I encourage you, before we used to talk about on a monthly basis, kind of give updates to your agents on what's happening, days on market, sales price, list price, things like that. I'd encourage you to do this even on a daily basis at this current time. And that's what many of our clients have been doing, that on a daily basis, is giving information out each day about what's happening, so the agents feel really in tune with what's happening, and it makes them feel more comfortable and confident, frankly, about being in the right place.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, everyone has been so hyper-focused on what is going on every day with COVID, that like if we were that hyper-focused on what was going on every day in our market with our business, that would make it be a huge opportunity. And the reasons we talked about fundamentals first is because if you've got all this nailed down, then what we do know is there's going to be opportunity in your marketplace. I've already been working with a client in an area on the West Coast, a specific brand for their offices are closing. And so when you have everything already set up and you know what your value is, the important thing is being able to mobilize and act quickly, right? So that was why we started with the fundamentals. But be on the lookout, number 1, and be ready, and then know what it is that you would like to go for when that going is good, right? So that's why knowing the target agent or the target office that you're trying to locate that might be a good fold in, or whatever the case might be. But having the fundamentals down is going to be a really important part to be able to act and mobilize quickly. Yeah,
opportunity is right now. Opportunity is right now. Strike while the iron's hot, and this is the time. So just because of time, Kelly, let's go ahead and move on to the other one's mindset, so we can keep respect for everybody's time.
Yes, and so really, just real quick, the main things to know is, you guys, several of you have probably heard me talk about the brain, but one thing about recruiting is when you're doing these daily activities, your brain is not going to want to do it. And so I always advise people, like, feel the fear and do it anyway, because what I have found is that it doesn't necessarily get easier, but the payoff is immense. And so just being able to know that you might be uncomfortable, and I noticed for my own self in this period of time that I was using sort of the excuse of, oh, is it weird if I'm calling people or not calling them? And I finally just stopped doing that and started calling people. And if nothing else, people are really want to talk about what's going on. So the market information and all of that becomes a really easy conversation. So the other thing I always say around mindset with recruiting is it's not an instant gratification event. So know that it's a repetitive, consistent, systematic building a platform, and all of the things that we're talking about are just important to keep in mind.
Yeah, recruiting's the lifeblood of the organization. I always say, like, if you're in an airplane, and actually I was talking to a gentleman who runs a real estate operation, and he flies small planes that don't have the pressurized cabins. And when you go above a certain altitude, you're required to put your oxygen mask on. And that oxygen, in that situation, that's kind of a real estate operation. You need to keep your oxygen mask on because you're operating at such a high level in running that operation. If you don't have your oxygen, you're going to pass out and you're going to die. And nobody wants that, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's recruiting. Recruiting is your oxygen mask. That gives you the ability to do so much more, keep your wits about you, put you in the driver's seat, as I mentioned earlier, and you can leverage those relationships in recruiting and retaining your agents, holding the commissions and the fees to whatever you look to do, because you're bringing in talent all the time because you're focused on it. To your earlier point, if you're not focused on this, it's not going to happen. You got to stay focused on it. So excellent. I love the mindset piece. I'm glad we wrapped up with that.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate it. Can you move to the next slide? Because I want to do some housekeeping with everybody and just share with them. So thank you. Next week, benchmarking your brokerage. We're going to talk about productivity lessons from the Mega 1000. We're going to have Jack Miller with us, who's our president and our chief technology officer. Also, just a reminder, we have prepare.t360.com. That's where you can see everything from Tactical Tuesdays. We have we'll put this information out and the recording of this tomorrow. And we'll also have the fireside chats is there and a bunch of other information that's very specific to this time with COVID-19. If you have any questions that you'd like to send to us, please feel free to submit questions ahead of time to Shannon at t360.com. And Kelly, can you go ahead and one more page?
Yep.
Thank you.
Well. Nope.
And then the last thing, additional help. And Kelly had mentioned this earlier, but during this time, we're actually giving out free consultation meetings. And Kelly's actually the person who's will be the one that you'll be walking and talking to, not walking to.
I'd love to walk and talk, but okay, we'll just do video chat.
Yeah. And so you can find her at Ask T360 at you see t360.com/ask. You can schedule that 30-minute consultation meeting. Kelly, great job. Really high-level topic, recruiting. It's front burner topic, should be on the front burner all the time. I appreciate you bringing all your expertise and sharing with everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. Before we go, do we have any questions on here? Create any challenges? No, we're good. Okay. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks,
appreciate everybody showing up. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.